I would like to start exactly by that, by explaining that the question is not when the unexpected, whether the unexpected is going to happen or not. It's when. And here actually we have two very recent events, two draws. One by an RNG, which is the first, which is the Atuba draw. Another one by a mechanical machine, which happened in the Philippines, in which the events, the draws, were perceived as being unusual, and so the audience, the public, the players raised serious concerns about the true randomness of these events. The first is because it was a sequential outcome. The second one that you can see was multiple of fives, of nines, and so it was 9, 18, 27, 36, 45, and so obviously that raised serious concerns. Because not only the outcome was unusual, but also because the number of winners was much higher than usual. And that's the first thing that I would like to say is that the unexpected can happen no matter whether you're using RNGs or mechanical machines. The reality is that it's not a question of if, it's really a question of when. And in this case, we can even talk about the statistical probability of having such an event, which is very low, but that's exactly the same statistical probability of any other combination. And furthermore, the reality is that there were a lot of winners, particularly because people tend to choose patterns. And so what can be perceived as unusual sometimes is not necessary. RNGs are basically computer-based systems that have an algorithm within them that transfers or that translates or that transforms seed data into a set of generated numbers according to the parameters of the game that we are analyzing. And this random number generator works in a deterministic way, which means that it's the seed that needs to have the necessary randomness. It is the seed that needs to be guarantee that it was in no way interfered with, because then the pseudo-random number generator is really a deterministic relationship. And so if you don't have the proper randomness in the seed, you're not going to have the proper randomness in the random number generator. And so that's an important point, because that's exactly how we are going to talk about another essential component of RNG, which is the proof of integrity, which has to do with the proof of the randomness of the seed that is used. First, and of those benefits is that you can have a system that is always on. So no matter what, you can have games at any moment in time. You can have fast-paced games. You can have all kinds of games, and this can all be supported by a single system. And so obviously that within lotteries that fosters innovation, it's much easier for the technological side of the lottery to fulfill the goals, the needs of your marketing department, because you can clearly develop more innovative games that reach all audiences from different ages, with different preferences, and so that's something that will have an impact on your revenues and will allow the lottery to grow as intended, right? But it's also a way of having a system that with the proper level of automation can be much more efficient in different domains. It can allow for integration with your gaming system. It can allow for integration with any control system, internal or external, and that can be done in an automatic way. It can be flexible enough to meet regulatory requirements. For example, you can have allocate specific rules for your regulators, for your auditors, and so you can really have an environment that is customized to the specific needs of each jurisdiction, of each lottery. It is very flexible. It is very robust, particularly if you're adopting an RNG that has been adopted by several other lotteries, and it's an easily scalable architecture. So your RNG can grow at the same time as the lottery wants to grow, and it can have different architectures. It can be different levels of automation according to what you also prefer. And so it's really a system that it's very easy to adapt to your needs and goals. You can easily add new games. You can easily shift, for example, your operations to a cloud system. That can have an impact both on your top and the bottom line of your balance sheet by increasing revenues, as I mentioned, but also by having a significant impact on your cost structure by allowing savings because you have a lower involvement of staff hours, and that also has an impact that the number of errors that can happen are much lower. You can have the automation of the whole draw process from the draw scheduling and to the point where your results are sent to any kind of social media. So all steps of the process can be automated, can be done in a way that minimizes errors and at the same time maximizes the efficiency of the process. And even in terms of analyzing winners, analyzing pre and post processing of data, that is something that can be included in the system, and so that allows the lotteries to have a much wider range of information for their own analysis, either by the marketing department or by your operations department as well. And so these are just example of flexible of different architectures that you can have. I'm not gonna enter in a lot of detail about this, but that's really to stress once more that you can have a system that adapts very easily to your goals and to your specific environment. There are challenges that come with RNG, and we're the first to recognize those. One of them has to do with this visibility challenge that was actually addressed by the previous speaker, which is, players don't see, the balls coming out of a machine. They don't see the interior of the RNG working, and so they may be skeptical about the process. There might be a higher level of doubt about whether or not the process is transparent. And so at that level, communication is fundamental, and the lotteries need to be aware of that. And it is important to really explain to the players that this process is actually more secure than any kind of mechanical machines, as I'm going to explain. Lotteries need to have the right methods in order to completely eliminate all doubts that the players can have regarding transparency. And the proof of integrity of a draw is something that is essential. It's one of the pillars that I think lotteries should focus their attention on, and I'm going to explain that a little bit further on. It is possible to have full transparency in RNG draws, and that's important that message is conveyed. The reality is that the lotteries do not need to forfeit all the benefits that I mentioned before of adopting RNGs with fear that may seen as a more obscure process by the players if they have the right communication tools. The second challenge is that related to security challenges. A lot of people mention the possibility of cyber attacks, and there are risks associated with adopting RNG, but they can all be properly covered by a proper RNG. There are risks of hardware malfunction, of software substitution, phishing, any kind of internal interference by staff. That you need to rely still on the chain of custody in all mechanical machines and traditional RNGs. In RNGs with proof of integrity, obviously it is important to ensure that the chain of custody is also as reliable as possible, but you have mechanisms of detect any kind of interference. And that way of guaranteeing that the seeds are predictable, that the seeds are not predictable, that's one of the fears, and so that you have true randomness, that they have not been manipulated, and so they have not been tampered with, either intentionally or non-intentionally, and so to verify that the RNG seed source was truly random, was not tampered with. And so what are the three fundamental pillars of a state-of-the-art RNG in our opinion? First you need to prove randomness of the draw, and that is done by, as you mentioned in the previous presentation, by having, multiple data, multiple draws that are analyzed, and this is done previously to the setup of the RNG process by the certification, but can also be done afterwards by analyzing all the data that is produced by the RNG. You need to have all the protective security measures and to prove the reliability of your RNG, and that is done by there's a whole range of security measures that I can discuss afterwards. But it is important, and this is what I would like to stress, to also have the possibility of proving the full integrity of the draw, right? And this is done through non-repudiation, which is basically you're gonna replicate that same draw under the same circumstances and show that in reality that was the outcome that should have been yielded by the pseudo-random generator. Okay, and so let's go over a little bit about this three pillars. So randomness, this is something that most RNGs available in the market. It's a criteria that is fulfilled. This is certified by independent entities. It's based on generating large amounts of data and really verifying that the outcomes fulfill all statistical properties. This is something that is obviously essential, but is not sufficient for a good quality RNG. The second is by adopting a whole range of protective security and measures. So there's measures of prevention that can go from the background checks of the personnel involved, strong password protection, code review, but also methods of detection where basically, for example, you should have the log of all the operations that were done in the system. You should have adoption of forensic methods to try to detect if everything was fulfilled, whether or not there was any kind of interference, verification of hashes of RNG system elements. And so these are once more methods that a lot of the traditional RNGs fulfill as well. What is not a characteristic that is fulfilled by traditional RNGs and by mechanical machines is really the third pillar that I would like to talk about, which is this proof of integrity. The ideal security approach it's an approach that reinforces the importance of prevention, because obviously you want to minimize the risks of having any kind of interference, but also focus very much on having right detection mechanisms. And in this case, by proof of integrity, you have 100% guarantee that you detect any kind of interference, and then have quick reaction. And so the proof of integrity is a proof of integrity that is applied to each random outcome. It can be verified by an independent audit system, either internally or external. So it can be an external entity that verifies the integrity of the RNG, and it's conclusive about detecting any kind of fault or fraud that the RNG system may have been subject to. It's basically, you have the RNG seed that the pseudo-random generator transforms into a draw outcome, and you can transfer that same RNG that was digitally signed, in which actually the digital signature is part of the seed itself, to an independent system, and you verify that the results that were generated are exactly the same. And so by that mechanism that I'm explaining very simply, you can truly prove that there was no kind of interference with the system, that the result was as random as you could expect. And so that's exactly it. You can prove that any kind of winning numbers, any kind of draw outcome were truly random, and that's the advantage of having a RNG with the proof of integrity, is the possibility that you can have of convincing your audience, your players, that the draw was random, that the draw was not interfered with, and that can be validated by your own regulator. So when you compare the two outcomes that I started, the two draws, the two unexpected events or perceived as unexpected events that I mentioned before, what is different between the two situations? What can mechanical machines and traditional RNGs do? Basically, you can prove that you adopted all preventive measures that have been planned before. You can apply detection techniques to try to show that there was no interference, but it can still be, perceived as a cold case. It's a little bit, being a little bit morbid, is when, someone dies and you have suspicion about what happened. You go over a set of reasons or determinants that you think may have happened in that case, if you don't find evidence of that, you say, well, probably the person died of natural causes. But the suspicion can still be there, and that's what the proof of integrity adds to the process. In reality, in the Ituba situation, all of the above could have improved, but in addition to that, Ituba was able to prove that the draw was truly random. They show the proof of integrity. They show the replication of the draw. They have the regulator convinced by the benign nature of the outcome by using this proof of integrity. And that's how I would like to conclude, is really by saying RNGs open a lot of doors. RNGs have a huge range of benefits in terms of allowing lotteries to grow, and that can be done with increased security if you have the proper RNG adopted.